Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin has been governing Russia since 1999. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, the country experienced a major economic crisis. But after the 2000s, that is, after Putin, it recovered, achieved rapid growth rates, strengthened central authority, and initiated various modernization programs in the Russian armed forces. But Putin was nothing like ordinary presidents. He was a KGB agent. And if you are a KGB agent, you have left your sense of mercy behind. You are always on alert, and you are willing to risk everything for Russia's interests. In a moment, I will show you all of these things I mentioned and much more with evidence. He was born in Leningrad, which was part of the Soviet Union, in the autumn of October 7, 1952. Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. His father was a disabled factory worker who became handicapped in his legs due to an unfortunate incident during the World War II. His mother, who lost one of her children to diphtheria and faced death from starvation during the World War II, was someone who cleaned the streets and laboratory equipment and worked for low wages. In short, Putin was the child of a very poor family. His mother's near death from starvation because of the war would become one of the memories etched into his mind that he would never forget. Because of the state policy defending communism during the Soviet Union era, Putin and his family had to live in a shared apartment. At that time, they lived in a small room without a toilet, hot water, or a bathroom. Vladimir Putin and his friends used to chase the rats that made their nests in the stairwells of the apartment building to pass the time. One day, Vladimir cornered a rat he was chasing, and since the rat had nowhere to escape, it attacked him. Later, Vladimir would say that this experience taught him a great lesson. Putin drew a very wrong lesson from a defenseless rat attacking him to survive in a fight that he himself had started. After all, some behaviors are formed in childhood. In the early stages of his education, he was not a hard-working person either. He saw mischief as a praiseworthy behavior. 6. With the help of a 6th grade teacher, Vladimir Putin's grades improved, and he started receiving a scholarship. Because now he had a dream. He wanted to be like the Secret Service agents he saw in the movies.
James.
He had a warrior spirit. As Vladimir Putin became more and more mature, he graduated from law school in 1975. Then he achieved that thing he dreamed of. He joined the KGB, the secret intelligence service of the Soviet Union. Putin, who had set his mind on joining the KGB since the 9th grade, pursued his dream of becoming an agent, studied law just to be able to enter the KGB, and he succeeded in this. Now that he was in the KGB, Putin improved his German and rose to the level of black belt in judo. In 1985, he went to Germany on a secret mission while the Berlin Wall was still standing. Putin really liked East Germany, but 4 years later in 1989, the Berlin Wall was torn down, and the German people were determined to take revenge on the Russians, whom they blamed for this. Putin witnessed this firsthand and asked Moscow for help on the matter, but he was basically told to handle it himself. From that point on, Putin's trust in the state was completely shattered, and at that moment, he made a decision. One day, he would lead this state. By the end of 1991, republics like Ukraine had begun to declare their independence one by one from the powerful Soviet rule. The Soviet Union split into 15 independent countries, becoming a weak Russia. The great Soviet Union had now collapsed. This was just like the fall of the Ottoman Empire. In Putin's eyes, Russia had lost 2 million square kilometers of territory. For him, this was a pain that caused millions of Russian citizens to migrate to other countries. The Russian economy was in a major collapse. Russia's first president, Boris Yeltsin, was someone who was seen as a clown in the eyes of the Russian people and was regarded as odd due to his tragic cooperation with the West. Moreover, he was quite an alcoholic. For most Russian citizens, he was a source of shame. Meanwhile, Putin was advancing step by step. After working for the KGB for exactly 16 years, Putin, who left the KGB in 1991, was determined to do what he had in mind. Between 1991 and 1992, he served as deputy mayor in Petersburg. He used the power of the presidency for the oligarchs. He helped them in many ways and became a well-liked figure among the oligarchs. Soon, he gained the support of oligarchs, mafia bosses, businessmen, and many others. With their help, he quickly rose to power. Following the Soviet Union's collapse, violence escalated in Chechnya after it separated from Russia in the 1990s. Chechens were organizing attacks on the Russian border and even penetrating deeper inside. In September 1999, several different places, including Moscow, were targeted, especially apartment buildings, and bombed. More than 300 Russians lost their lives. Boris Yeltsin was being accused of not being able to protect his people. Putin, on every occasion in front of the media, stated that revenge would be taken for this. Thanks to his attitude and firm stance, his approval rating, which was 2% before the bombings, rose to 45% after the bombings. The people loved Putin. On December 31, 1999, Boris Yeltsin resigned. More precisely, he was forced to resign, and he announced that Vladimir Putin was appointed as the acting president in his place. Now, the only thing he had to do was to build a strong Russian state. But a few years later, allegations emerged that all these bombings were carried out by the Kremlin with the involvement of Putin. So it was thought that these events were a deliberately designed plan to discredit Boris. Of course, government officials denied this theory. After the bombing, Russia and Chechnya entered a devastating war. Data shows 80,000 people died. Russia controlled Chechnya within a year. In the election held during the war, Putin won with a high percentage of 44.98% of the votes. One of Putin's first actions was to suppress the oligarchs in power. He rewarded those who supported him while punishing those who opposed him.
When you learned about my future, you scattered like cockroaches. If the businessmen don't make a deal with me, the factory will be reopened. One way or another, we know how to do business without them.
The other task was to take control of the media. One of the reasons for the Soviet Union's collapse was the internet's ubiquity and the global ease of accessing information. Being aware of this situation, Putin eventually took control of the vast majority of the media, and many news channels began to broadcast biased news. Just like he doesn't use a cell phone, Vladimir Putin also avoids using the internet, even though he owns a computer, and he doesn't have any social media accounts either. Of course, there were other things that made Putin special. For example, he was a good hunter and a good researcher. He personally participated in scientific studies or performed martial arts demonstrations. He was swimming, fishing, playing ice hockey, riding horses, and even singing songs. Of course, these deliberate actions he took helped him maintain his popularity year after year. But there were also traits he couldn't hide. You can see that his right hand doesn't move very much. This is a behavior left over from his KGB years. He learned that the right hand should always stay close enough to reach for a weapon at any moment. And now he had adopted this as a habit. He couldn't give up this behavior. By the year 2000, Putin wanted to bring the separatist movements in Russia under control. To manage nearly 100 regions of Russia more easily, he divided the country into 7 administrative districts. He also appointed people of his own choosing to govern these districts. Putin's goal was to make Russia strong again, just like the former Soviet Union. And to revive this spirit, he made a start by bringing back the Soviet anthem. Vladimir Putin began to be regarded as the person who transformed Soviet Russia into a modern federation. In 2008, Russia interestingly invaded Georgia, a former Soviet republic. This attitude led to reactions from all over the world. It was clearly a show of force. It was a warning to other countries that had separated from the Soviet republic. By 2012, he won the elections again, and with a high percentage of votes. Pursuing an aggressive foreign policy, Putin supported by sending weapons and warplanes to Isa in 2015. He took actions that would put Turkey in a difficult position by providing assistance to the groups we consider our enemies. Putin was angry at every country that joined NATO, meaning every country that stood against Russia, and this was clearly obvious. He was also disturbed by Ukraine's stance, especially since 2014. By 2022, Ukrainian Prime Minister Zelensky wanted to take a step that would anger him even more. Moreover, even though he knew what was going to happen, Putin could not remain indifferent to this. However, the real goal of the Ukrainian president was completely different.